Hello and welcome to our session on managing stress during the college application process. My name is Dr. Johanna Massey, and I am the manager of college readiness for Summit Public Schools. I've actually done some research on stress and mental health among Silicon Valley high school seniors navigating the college choice process, so I'm really excited to be talking to you about such an important topic. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go over three main topics. The first is to understand how stress is a cycle. The second is to identify some common causes. And the third is to discuss some coping strategies and ways to disrupt the cycle of stress. So as I said, stress comes in a cycle. It presents when a student feels ill-equipped to face a challenge and then doesn't seek help and really tries to manage it rather unsuccessfully on their own. And stress can come from many different sources. It can be from friends, it can be from school, classes, tests, and of course, college applications. So the cycle of stress starts usually with a thought. So maybe the thought could be something like, I'm failing this class or I failed a test. And then that can lead to thinking that this means I'm not going to college. And then that can lead to thinking that my life is over. So this becomes the challenge that the student is ill-equipped to deal with. So once they have these negative thoughts, they can turn into negative feelings such as hopelessness or frustration or stress. And these negative emotions can then manifest as negative behaviors such as escapism, avoidance, watching a lot of television, playing video games, anything to avoid having to deal with these negative feelings. And then these again, once you find in the pattern, the fall down the path of these negative behaviors, they can again turn into negative thoughts, and it goes on and on. As parents, we often only see the stress that our students are going through once it hits the behavioral stage, because then you think, there's something that's just not right about my student. And then once we see that our student is stressed, that can cause us stress, which just affects the whole family. So as I said, stress can come from different sources. And actually in my research, I found there were three main axes that were the broad categories that were the sources of stress, especially as it pertains to going to college and preparing to apply for college. The first is family, and I know you all want the best for your students and that you do not mean to put stress on them. But sometimes things happen even by accident. There was one family I worked with who had two daughters, and they very much wanted to not put pressure on their daughters to encourage them to go to college wherever they wanted. But the mother in that family happened to have gone to Harvard and been very happy there. And she would talk fondly about her undergraduate days. And the older daughter interpreted this to mean that her mother wanted her to go to Harvard. And she found herself putting a lot of pressure on herself to please her mom, even though her mother had no intention that her daughter should necessarily go to Harvard unless it was the best fit for her. So kind of sometimes subtle messaging can have a negative impact on a student, again, even if you have the best of intentions. The student and their peer group. Now, students' friends are great sources of support, but they can be insular and they can create little bubbles of thinking about, particularly around the importance of going to top colleges. And so you have these situations where maybe students are competitive with each other. Maybe they compare grades. I found high school students engaged in this kind of passive aggressive, what I called academic bullying, where one student would go around saying, oh, I can't believe this. I'm a total failure. I get an A- on this test. And then, all the people around them who got an A- or less kind of felt bad about themselves. And that created a great deal of stress and distress among these students who felt lesser than their peers for this reason. Another source of stress is schools and the school environment. Some schools are more competitive than others, and The messages that students get from their teachers, their administrators, their mentors, these all have an impact on how they approach college and how stressful the application process is. So both parents and students have their own stressors as they try to navigate this college process, and um, it can be very hard on families, but people will get through it. So let's take a moment and just zoom out and as think more broadly than this specific college conversation. What do you want for your student? Here's some ideas: good health, happiness, financial stability, a moral compass, strong family and friends connections. Just reflect on this list for a second and think, well, if this is really what we value, how we want our student or our child to be successful, then should we really be so wrapped up in getting into a top school? So, what are some strategies for moving forward as your family navigates the college choice process, and you want to keep your sanity for everybody involved? Our first strategy is to create a plan. Think about when you're going to talk about anything related to college or college applications, and you can think about this as a multi-year plan. Like, what kinds of topics are you going to talk about freshman year or sophomore year? Or it can be more localized. When does your family have time to get together and reflect and have meaningful conversations? Is this the weekend? Is this after dinner? When is going to be a time when is in pretty good moods and the conversation is likely to go smoothly? Anticipate where your student might run into issues and try to come up with solutions ahead of time. For example, senior year, fall of senior year, there's a lot of deadlines. If you have a student who tends to procrastinate, makes try to come up with some plans beforehand to think, okay, how am I going to help this? How am I going to help my student get over their procrastination and make sure that they do meet their deadlines? Have roles. When do you want to step in? When do you step back and let your student manage their situation more on their own? Have these conversations together so you know, going into as you approach the process, what do you expect from each other? Make sure that you're in agreement. One of the best things about Summit is that all students have access to a mentor. So think about when you want to work with your mentor. How can your mentor best support your family? Our second strategy that we recommend is to sit down together and think about your deadlines well ahead of time. If you go to our website, college.summitps.org, there's actually checklists for each grades, so you can make a plan and a whole timeline for what the college application process will look like over 4 years. We actually recommend that you have a shared family calendar that can be electronic or paper, however, whatever works best for your family, where you actually, especially when it comes to senior year, write in your deadlines so everybody has a shared understanding of the next steps. Set reminders ahead of time for your deadlines so that you can have a conversation to make sure that you're on track to meet them. And agree ahead of time, because things will happen and it is entirely possible that deadlines will be missed. So what are you going to do? How are you going to work together to address this before it happens so you can anticipate? Our third recommendation is to listen, and then listen again. This is a college choice for families is a dialogue. This is a significant decision for you, your student, it's a family decision. And it's important that you listen carefully to what your student has to say. For many students, this could be one of the first big adult decisions they make, and they really want to show that they're ready to take those next steps into independence, and you want to support them in that. But this doesn't mean that you can't share your thoughts. Like I said, it's a dialogue. There should be a back and forth where you both have space to share your opinions and your feelings. But as a parent, listening means maybe giving the students space to share what they think, even if it goes against maybe what you thought they would think, if that makes sense. You don't want to not hear what they're saying just because you come into the conversation with preconceived ideas. You can show them that they're listening by show them that you're listening by busting out your active listening strategies. Some ideas could be, summarizing what they're saying or asking probing questions. You could have a conversation where you say something like, "Okay, I hear you say X, but also have you considered Y?" That way, you validate what they're saying, but you also are leaving the door open to offer your own input. Closely related to listening is being open and honest with what you yourself share. And this is probably no more can't be stressed enough how important this is, particularly around the issue of paying for college. This can be a difficult conversation for families to have, but as early in the college application process as possible, it's important to really lay on the table, how are you going to pay for college, because it is expensive. And the earlier you have those conversations, the better. The student will be in a better position to apply for financial aid and scholarships and be able to come up with a plan that will allow them to go to the school of their choice. There are definitely stories, there are times it happens that students get to the spring of their senior year and they have all their acceptances and they're very excited. And that's when the parents or the family says, actually, we can't afford this. And this can be very heartbreaking for students. So again, this could be going to college is a huge step into independence for students, but you are still their parents. So it's okay and even encouraged that you share your concerns and your thoughts. You want the best for your student and you know them very well. And maybe students might say, well, I don't, they might not act like they want to hear from you, but they do. And families, I've found, learn a lot about each other as they go through the college application process. It can be very meaningful and a great opportunity to, share something that's very important for the family as a whole. So share your concerns, but don't forget strategy number 3, listen. Strategy number 5 is to ask for help when needed. So there is no question that preparing for college and applying for college, it can be very challenging for many students, and this can, in many cases, lead to mental health problems. So now a little pressure can be a good thing. It can build grit and resilience in students, which they have been found to be very important when it comes to graduating from college. Home can be a great space to explore coping mechanisms. But when it's time to reach out for mental health support, that's also important. This can be very good modeling for your student, because college itself can be very stressful, and there are usually free mental health support services on campus. So it's important that the student become familiar and comfortable with seeking out these resources if they need them. You're not going through this process alone. We don't expect you to navigate this very unfamiliar territory with no support. At Summit, we urge you to contact your mentor, the school leads and administration, and the college readiness team for help. Our sixth strategy is to remember the big picture. Now, college is just one step in a student's lifelong journey. It's a very important step, but it's one way they're going to get where they're going. It's not the only way where they're going to get where they're going. Tying your self-worth to college admissions is probably the biggest source of stress that students can encounter. This can cause burnout and mental health issues. In my research, I found that the seniors who had the most stress-free college application process were either just personality wise extremely laid back, or they had they had discovered and cultivated their passions earlier in their high school careers. And so by the time it came for them to make their college choices, they had a sense of like who they are, what they would bring to the school, and they had confidence in their choices. So it's important that you remind your students that they're loved. You know, this is hard on it's gonna be hard on everybody. And yes, your student is becoming an adult, but also they need your support. So think about back to what you want for them, you know, health, happiness, financial stability, moral compass, community. College will play a role in getting there, but it's not the only role that to what gets them there. So let's look back on this cycle of stress. We have negative thoughts turning into negative feelings, turning into negative behaviors, which again affects negative thoughts. And here are the strategies that we talk to for addressing them and disrupting the cycle of stress. So as a review, 1, create a plan. 2, set a calendar with deadlines. 3, listen. 4, be open and honest in communication. 5, ask for help. And 6, remember the big picture. Now, we have some resources that we'd like to share with you. The first is Frank Bruni's book, Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, an antidote to the college admissions mania. And this is a wonderful book where he profiles adults and their different educational journeys and shows how there are many different paths one could take. And it's ultimately about the quality of the educational experience itself rather than perhaps the name brand of the college the student attends that helps them become successful and happy adults. Another resource I like is the Challenge Success Program. This is based in the School of Education at Stanford, and they do research on stress and well-being and mental health among students. As an example, on February 24th, 2021, they're going to have a session called The Well-Balanced Student, Avoiding Stress and Overscheduling During the Pandemic and Beyond. So that's kind of an example of the workshops that they'll offer to the public. So thank you for your attention. I had trouble with the slide. Again, our website is college@summitps.org. You can go there for a wealth of resources about the entire college application process. And you can also email the College Readiness team at collegereadiness@summitps.org. I hope you learned something from this presentation, and best of luck as you embark on your very exciting college application journey.